Hello, everyone. How are we? It's good to see you. Welcome back to the Sunday Debrief with Turn Left. I'm Sneakcret. I'm going to be hosting you tonight, but we are joined by our, I would say, friends of the show, part of the show, Curtis and Cog, who are going to be chatting through some of the headlines with us today. How are we both?
Very well, very well. The most organized stream we've ever done. I think people are going to realize it's been a weird day, and there's been a lot of let's say we're not that organized. So I think it's going to be more funny for people to watch us try and do some serious political commentary whilst we're kind of winging it today.
I don't think anyone noticed. I think we're fine. I think we got away with that.
Yeah, you've actually completely done us in there.
So I probably shouldn't have said it. Okay, yeah. I'm always told that I'm too honest.
This is why the left can't get anything done. But yeah, we're going to chat through a few different bits. We were talking about it earlier, and one of the challenges that we have this week is we feel like a lot of the major stories happened in the week, and we wanted to cover those off, went into a lot of detail with them. But there are a few bits that we have had in from the audience. And I think, Curtis, you wanted to chat through a couple of topics. Cog, I don't know if you've got something specific that you'd like to go on.
Not particularly.
Cog's going to follow us along. But just before we begin, I do just want to give a quick thank you to everybody who's been following us over the last couple of days. I think we've gone from, it was like 14,000 subscribers on Friday morning, and now we're up to 14,200 already over the weekend, which is just really amazing to see. We appreciate all of you. We appreciate your support. We appreciate your patience, especially with our live timings. We're very grateful for that. That's what it's all about. From a mutual aid perspective, I think. But if you do want to support us, if you want us to get more organized, if you want us to get calendars, anything like that, you can support us over on Patreon. You've got two different tiers. You can support us at £3 a month or £5 a month, or you can make a one-off donation. We do also want to hear from the chat today. We asked earlier for any stories that people were particularly interested in, any new updates that have come out that they want to hear us talk through. So do drop in the chat anything that you want to see. Just looking through as we've got it. Too honest is what we want from journalism. Thank you. That's what I was trying to say to people earlier. Urgency is one of the traits of white supremacy. So actually, if we're a little bit late, if we get ourselves a little bit lost, that's radical of us. So let's jump into the.
Can I just quickly cut you off there? Sorry.
Wow.
Already, I know. That's white supremacy for you. No. So basically, it was pointed out to us that you can't do a one-off donation on Patreon. So we set up a Ko-fi. So that's why I just wanted to quickly jump in there. If you go to Ko-fi, it's spelled ko-fi.com/turn left. That's where you can do one-off donations. I think it's really annoying there's a hyphen in the address because you have to spell it out each time. But I just want to chuck that in there. And then, so back to you, host. Back to the studio. I always say that.
We're all in the studio.
I know, that doesn't really make sense, does it? Oh, God.
Jim just said in the chat. Jim in the chat just said, pretty sure it's pronounced coffee.
Well, but then if I said coffee, then people might type in COFFEE.com.
That's true.
So maybe I deliberately called it Ko-fi. I don't know. If you read it, it looks like Ko-fi. So
honestly, when we tell you guys it's been a long week,
it's been such a long week.
It was exciting earlier today. Me and Curtis were speaking to a US socialist political channel, YouTube channel that we're gonna be speaking to. So it's cool. It's nice. It's good things that are happening as well in terms of I think Cal's been at the Green Party conference, so he's doing a big Green Party deep dive tomorrow, which has been really exciting. So it's very, very cool to have lots of different things going on, but I think we're still adjusting, getting used to the rise of the price of fame, I guess. But let's have a look firstly. So first story of the week, I just wanted to follow up because we spoke to Jessica, who some of you might remember, I think the Wednesday before last, very good friend of the show and fantastic for updates on particularly a lot of trans issues that we're seeing at the moment. But there has recently been a study published in Australia that has ruled puberty blockers to be like safe, effective, and reversible, which is pretty frustrating on the back of the CAS review. It basically was a very similar study. It was looking through existing studies and identifying the relevance of them. And what it's done is it said that actually they are fine, they're safe, they're reversible. We've got Wes Streeting talking about bringing in his new NHS clinical trials. It just feels really frustrating to know that in Australia it's being covered as safe and effective, and also that none of the UK media have decided to cover that story. What do you reckon, guys? Curtis, what do you think first?
So obviously what was in the headlines was the CAS review. I spoke to Erin Rees. She's based in the US. She's a journalist, but obviously she speaks about this a lot. And God, there were so many discussions around how legit the CAS review was. Some people were saying it's even those who aren't like transphobic, they were saying like, oh no, there was some discrepancies or issues from some of the sort of analysis from the CAS review. It wasn't as transphobic as some people made it out to be, but then you also had a lot of transphobes using the CAS review as a tool to essentially push their transphobia. The things what I took from the CAS review was that there was a lot of people involved in the sort of study were linked to transphobes or transphobic organizations, which is obviously a worry in itself. There were some really weird assumptions in there talking about girl toys and boy toys. Essentially, the premise there is that like naturally boys are sort of gravitate to certain male things and girls are want to use girl toys. That's literally what it is. And it was kind of strange because it's like, well, there's a lot of social norms that change over time. For an example, that pink used to be considered a man's color, now it's considered a woman's color. We all understand that, and I think there was a lot of assumptions within that CAS view that tried to link biological biological reality it's the entire thing. And I don't know, I found it an extremely strange document. What is absolutely, I found clear, is that puberty blockers have been used for decades, right? They've been used since the 70s, and they weren't used for people who were who wanted to transition, right? They were used for something completely different, and no one batted an eyelid. No. It was safe enough to use on kids in the 70s. Yeah, it's not safe now. And there's been countless studies across the world that have said that puberty blockers are safe and reversible. But suddenly, when people are using it to transition, now it's an issue. So I'm absolutely not surprised that this study that's come out from Australia has essentially said this, because it's echoed what a lot of studies have already said. What is really important, though, is the political side of it, not the scientific side of it. And that is the Labour Party, who are supposedly the Progressive Party, have adopted the Conservatives' policy on I would say very transphobic legislation. And maybe you can talk more about that, Sneakcret. But that's essentially the political side. So I think the science, okay, not settled, but I think there's a big scientific consensus that those of us who support medical intervention for trans people, those who support those who want to use puberty blockers to give time to think about what they want to do. I think the science is actually largely behind us, which is quite funny, because a lot of the gender criticals say, well, no, you're not accepting science or biological reality. I think it's the opposite there. But what's more important, I think, is the political side, because even though this study from Australia kind of confirms a lot of what we already thought, that doesn't matter to some people, right? That doesn't matter to some politicians. They ignore it because there's already been studies like this before and they're ignoring it. So there's no reason why they wouldn't ignore it again.
Yeah, it's like they've continued to be safe and effective.
Yeah, that's exactly it. I mean, you essentially sort of summed it up in a shorter way than I did. Thank you.
Cog, from your side?
Yeah, I think this. I agree with Curtis, but I would also say that recently, this is not the only piece of news in this area that's come out. But recently, also, the British Medical Association came forward and said that they were basically going to challenge the CAS review and challenge it on its because they believe on first sighting that it has like a poor evidentiary basis. So they're coming up with their own review, and like people who are confident in their in the strength of their position and of the scientific process, a lot of the gender criticals have immediately lost their mind and said you can't question the CAS review. You can't you can't allow it to be put under scrutiny, and say that the BMA's lost loads of credibility. But it's not true. The BMA is just as credible as it ever was, and the BMA is more in step with international organisations across the world. It seems to me that CAS threw out loads of evidence in order to reach a conclusion that she, maybe not she wanted to come to. And I think this is perhaps a point that it's worth labouring on. There's a very famous interview of Andrew Marr speaking to Noam Chomsky. It's the manufacturing consent interview, where Chomsky, for those who don't know, Chomsky talks about manufacturing consent and media hegemony. And Andrew Marr says something along the lines of, well, are you saying that that I'm being instructed by my paymasters on what to say? And Andrew Marr says, no, I'm sorry, not Andrew Marr. Noam Chomsky says, no, I'm not saying that. I'm saying that if you didn't believe the things that you believe, you wouldn't be sitting where you're sitting, right? And I think it's a similar thing with Hillary Cass, right? It's not that she out and out is like part of a conspiracy to like try to try to negatively influence trans healthcare. It's that she was already following like anti-trans groups on Twitter. She was already following Fair Play for Women and a bunch of other like anti-trans groups on Twitter. We know that she spoke with some policy advisors of Ron DeSantis. Now, that might be an innocent thing, but it kind of shows the direction and the things that she's open to in comparison with like taking on, studies from genuine scientific bodies and from internationally respected human rights.
It's like an internal bias, isn't it? It's not necessarily like, right, I'm going to look at this research because they're transphobes and I'm a transphobe. It's like, oh, I'm going to subconsciously give more credence to this kind of evidence because it confirms my bias. And I think that, to be fair, that's the case for like most people in all institutions, right? I mean, some people can posture whether she's a massive transphobe or not. Is that really helpful? I don't know, because what's more important is what's actually being done. So I think you make a good point there, though, that there's probably some internal bias that she's kind of overlooked one form of evidence that supports, like, I don't want to say our side, it's a really weird way of saying because it's not a fucking football game, is it? But, this particular point of view and probably, downplays one side and sort of upplays other forms of evidence that fits with her internal bias.
Well, it's like I was going to say, it's like the thing when you talk about like hiring in organizations, when there's an issue of like a lack of diversity in hiring. Like if you've got a team where one person is doing all of the hiring, then the odds are that team will reflect that person as an individual, which is why if you want to have like an actual diverse and unbiased hiring process, you have multiple people in the hiring process from different backgrounds and different experiences. So it's strange when you have one person in charge of the CAS, like you're relying on that individual person to somehow be completely neutral, as opposed to having things like actually peer reviewed and checked against each other. I was going to say, just because someone's just flagged it in the chat, I've just seen it. There's been a news story 3 hours ago about Wes Streeting getting called out by GB News, and people agree that GB News has done something interesting.
Wow, I'll tell you what, I'm sure we can probably download a clip, one of us, and we can probably
I've been downloading for the past couple of minutes.
Is that clip?
Downloading it.
Okay,
Yeah.
so in about 5 minutes, we can even go into this clip, which is interesting because I've not heard about this. So, are we, before we see the clip, could be wrong, but are we saying that GB News did something quite good and held Wes Street into account on this hypocrisy of trans people? Is that what we're seeing? I mean, I'm sure they'll spin it in a way that's still transphobic, right? But I mean, to be fair, and if GB News does do this, I'll give them a little bit of credit because no one in like the so-called liberal media, not the Guardian or other people, haven't really talked about it, have they? Which is insane.
If it was trans people, if it was trans people, they wouldn't have put positive coverage. But what it's about is Labour cronyism, more specifically.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's now that Labour are also this is the unfortunate thing that always happens though with far right is that they'll be like, yeah, they're all crooks, and we'll be like, yeah, they're all crooks, and they'll be like, so now let's be racist, and it's like, well, no, we didn't.
So just to confirm, then this GB News thing is nothing to do with Cass and all that. It's completely something else.
It's a Wes Streeting issue.
Right. Okay. Well,
it's a Wes Streeting issue. Yeah.
I mean, because that to be honest, it's quite shocking that they would have taken a good stance on that. So, probably then it's going to be they're attacking Labour on cronyism because they just want to attack the Labour Party because they don't care about Tory cronyism, do they? But kind of like a broken clock is right twice a day, right? But they're not doing it for good reasons. I mean, we'll talk about cronyism whether it's Tories or Labour. We just don't like cronyism. Mad.
Nigel Farage in the Reform Party at GB News, being a controlling shareholder in both. Could that be called cronyism? No, that's not cronyism. It's fine when he does it. I've just seen a message in the chat from Cassius that says it's jarring and upsetting that the only time I hear my name in the media is when someone's being transphobic.
Which is very often. So
often. It's unfortunate. Just before we do look at the clip, there's also been again, Jessica Harriet, friend of the show, did share with me earlier that one of the other things that Labour have done this week is, well, they've issued the official guidance for schools has been published about talking about issues of like gender, LGBT, etc. And within it, they have essentially it's pretty much exactly the same as what we had in December from the Tories, like their overall guidance. I'm just gonna pull up the context on this side, but it's basically they've taken like the T out of all LGBT schooling advice, and they've said that essentially throughout the entire document, it's very similar to what some elements of the Cass review talk about. I mean,
Cog, you seem quite surprised there. Have you just learnt that now?
No, I exasperated was what I was trying to get across, but I can't control my facial expressions. I did too much drinking at uni, and now my face doesn't work properly. Exasperation was what I was trying to get across because I was just thinking, Jesus Christ, we might as well not have switched governments. But that's a thought for in a minute. Sorry, Charlotte.
No, don't worry. It was basically a lot of the same stuff of like if a child appears to be experiencing gender dysphoria, they should send them to therapy instead of being called gender critical. It's gender questioning. Essentially, it's now being treated as though it's not part of like the LGBT. It's like there's your sexuality, and then there's this like mental health issue.
That's trans erasure, isn't it?
Yeah, it's complete erasure. And it's really, really similar to what they were talking about in December. I know we were chatting about it earlier on that call, but like I don't know how many policies have we seen except for scrapping Rwanda at this point from Labour that have been like markedly different.
I mean, I think that negotiations with pay for public sector workers has been one, which I did praise, by the way, but nothing about private sector workers just yet. So I'm not sure about that. But that's probably the only two things. In terms of Rwanda, though, I mean, they're scrapping it because it's unworkable, not because it's immoral. I've not seen any public statements from the Labour Party talking about how messed up it is as a concept and as a policy, which I wanted to see. And to be honest, I mean, I'm not surprised because that's what they did in opposition. When the Conservatives were talking about stopping the boats, the Labour Party didn't say, well, this is just extreme rhetoric, which is only going to add fuel to the fire. Of course, yeah, we can smash criminal gangs, but we also need to, we need a public voice to say that refugees are not your enemy and we should be looking out for them. Their response was, well, it's unaffordable, unworkable. That's my best Starmer impression, which helps because I've got a bit of a cold. My nose is a bit itchy, so maybe it's even better. So it's even with the Rwanda policy, it's so cynical. And it's not that. And the thing is, though, it's kind of like, well, they'll scrap the Rwanda plan, but they won't change up the entire policy. They might just pick a different country.
They are still deporting people to Vietnam.
Right. So it's like, what difference does that even make? So the only marketed difference I can see is, yes, on public service pay with the unions, they have got round the table. Okay,
3.
Maybe that's it. Well, 2.5, I think.
2.5. Onshore wind ban being gone. So that's 3.
Yeah, but they've also renewed new oil and gas licenses. Kind of counteracts that. Again, like obviously, yes, the Tories might not ban onshore wind, right? But it's holistically as a climate policy, there's not much difference there. I mean, I feel like that when apologists for the Labour Party say, and they say that Tories and Labour are the same. Well, they've allowed onshore wind farms now. Like, but if you are renewing the oil and gas licenses, that doesn't mean the planet isn't going to turn around and go, well, that's all right then. I guess I won't produce 1 million climate refugees. I guess I won't engage in drastic weather changes because you've done something a little bit nice on side with something really, really bad. So I'm not going to give them credit for that. It needs to be a holistic change to climate policy, or it's essentially nothing. It's just slowing the decline a little bit.
I can't do 3.5.
You can't do 3.5.
Oh no, wait, I can. I was trying to do it with the wrong hand.
Wrong finger. Yeah. Fair enough.
I was like, this is impossible. Okay, so great. So we've got 3 policies there, 3.5. See, and people think they were the same. People compare them. How unfair.
How unfair. 3.5 policies.
Yeah, 3.5 policies. Change. The party of change.
Party of change.
Wonderful. I think that, should we have a look at this Wes Street speaking of things that haven't changed?
I'm having trouble because the clip was a bit too large. I downloaded it in 1080p and now I'm having to like shrink it down because of our brilliant streaming software that we use.
Which, by the way, I want to say that we are soon going to be changing the streaming software, which is going to definitely make things a bit more professional again. Not quite sure when that is because we need to train people up on it. But then in the next couple of weeks, we will have an upgraded streaming software. You're going to see, I think, more seamless, high quality content on the live. And I think even just doing stuff on the fly, this new software is actually designed for it, which would have been good for the election coverage. But I mean, we did a fantastic job, I think, with what we had then.
That was crazy, that election.
That was crazy, actually. If people don't know, we did a 12-hour live election coverage. The longest election coverage out of most people, I think. Navarra went from 9:30 till 5. A lot of, I think the BBC did like 9 till 5, amateurs. We did 9 p.m. to 9 a.m.
That was massive. I only went to sleep because my own chat on TikTok were like, you look like you're already asleep. You need to stop. Because I remember being on at like 4 a.m. with Cal and my eyes were like...
You were like, can I go now, please?
Yeah, Cal was like, can you come back in a minute? I was like, I don't think I can.
I think I went from like a delirious period, and then I got a second wind, and by like 8 o'clock I was pretty good again. Having a couple of cans on stream probably helped, but
a couple of tinnies. Was it Champagne Socialist fell asleep?
Sorry,
Champagne Socialist. He fell asleep in like one of the. I think Cal said he'd gone for a break, and then he found him and he was asleep.
I know. So Harry, also known as Champagne Socialist, he was one of our hosts. And I remember at one point I sort of turned to him and I went, Harry, and I sort of spoke a bit loud. I was like, Harry! And he sort of like jolted like that. So I think he was like internally sleeping. So we woke him up. Helena, aka No Justice, she attempted to do a 24-hour stream, which is crazy. I don't know what she got, 12 or 16 hours, but her OBS software broke down and she was like, well, screw it. Of course, she guested on our show. She guested on Navarra as well, so she was everywhere. So yeah, that was great.
She must have been so happy when that software
yes,
broke.
yes, I got excuses.
Oh no, the
Go
software.
to bed. Oh my god.
Yeah, maybe the software didn't break down. She was like, "Oh, the software, yeah."
Neoliberal software.
But next election, though, think about this. Next election, this is what is going to happen, right? We're going to have a studio. We're going to have a full-on kit. It's all going to be pro. We're going to get guests in the studio. We're going to get politicians. We're going to be better than the BBC. I mean, I think in concept-wise, we're better than the BBC anyway, but in terms of production value, yeah. And hopefully we'll be full-time paid workers as well.
And we'll have audio on our intro.
Yeah, audio on
our intro. And if you want us to have audio on our intro, you can sponsor us on Patreon for £3 or £5 a month.
Yes.
Shall we talk through then also do you want to take us out through this situation with Jazz Arthwell, Labour MP, landlord?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I want to speak more about the response from Keir Starmer. So finally, someone actually probably asked him the question. As most of you would know, Jazz Arthwell was a Labour MP. He replaced Sam Tarry. Jazz Arthwell is the biggest landlord, right, in the Commons, including Tory MPs. And then recently it was found out that he's also a slum landlord, and a lot of his tenants were extremely unhappy because they were living in really bad conditions. And fair play to the BBC. I don't like to say this, but they did actually do some sort of investigative journalism, which is very far and few between. And they went to these houses, and there was ants everywhere. There was mold everywhere. And also they were reporting on tenants saying that they were scared to speak out. Some of them who gave video interviews later contacted the BBC and said, actually, can you pull the interview because I think I might even get evicted for this. All these scandals, and then it came out, and then Jazz Arthwell, his first response was, well, I'm a really good landlord, so I hired my property managers for their excellent service. So I'm really angry at them. And he sort of passed the buck. He was like, I didn't know about this. It's like, you do. I mean, the property managers manage at your discretion, right? So if you say, well, if I find out that someone's claiming benefits, the property managers will just go on the word of Jazz Arthwell. Then he kind of apologized, sort of. Now, I wanted to talk about Keir Starmer's response because they said to him, first of all, what do you think? And he's like, well, I mean, it's being sorted out now. That's good. Although I find it extremely unacceptable. Okay. And then the question was, would you withdraw the whip? And he sort of did a Keir Starmer politician answer, which is not really answered the question. He just said, well, it's being sorted. And I just thought, this fucking arsehole, right? Let's fucking just say it. This fucking arsehole removed the whip of 7 Labour MPs a few weeks ago for voting against the 2-child benefit cap, which would lift 500,000 kids out of poverty. It's actually one of those policies that like has a immediate effect. It's not like, oh, you know, child poverty is really complicated and there's nuances to it. Right, but this particular policy, you can just do it overnight. He says he removed the whip of 7 MPs for that, but a slum landlord, right? A slum landlord who has overseen horrific instances of neglect for these properties. He's making money off it, making a profit off of it. And also the fact that people are living in fear that they don't even want to be interviewed because they might get evicted. Oh, well, no, we're not going to remove it. He's sorting it out. What the fuck does that mean? So I was really angry about that. Not surprised, but also still very angry. That's kind of the latest story on that. I don't know what you guys think. I mean, I know what you guys think, but I want to hear you say it.
I think he did his best as a landlord.
Yeah, he did his best, all right, didn't he?
It's hard being a landlord. Sometimes prices go up and then you have to charge more. And
yeah, I think actually working in the capitalist system is far easier than not having a job and leeching off of society and off of people's income to pay for your own housing. That's really, really hard.
Yeah,
that's what an entrepreneur does, and we know that the world spins because of entrepreneurship.
Yeah, and if we don't let him do that with his house, with all his houses, then
housing will disappear because they provide housing, don't they?
What happened to investment?
Yeah,
I thought we cared about investment.
Yeah, if you let ticket scalpers disappear, if you get rid of ticket scalpers, you'll get rid of tickets. It's the same thing, you know.
It is, because I mean, I don't know if the people watching now, you really should check it out. There was it was the big landlord, Samuel Leeds, right? Samuel Leeds has a huge portfolio, multi-millionaire, and he sort of went famous on TikTok because he's sort of he's not just a landlord, he's also sort of a content creator, I think, about landlordism. And one of his famous TikTok clips went viral because he said, "This is me. I'm in the north, and basically I'm buying all these cheap housing, and then I'm renting it out really high." And he said the slogan, "Buy low, rent high," unequivocally just extracting wealth from thin air or from people, right? And obviously that's extremely immoral, but it happens in the system of private landlordism. And his old company, his portfolio company, was called Buy Low, Rent High. He's now since changed the name. And I called him out because he went on another weird sort of TikTok extravaganza where he kicked down the front door of supposedly one of his tenants' housing. Now, he said it wasn't actually a tenant, but it was just him. No, sorry, not kicking down, chainsawing it down. That clip went viral. The media picked up on it, and then it went on GB News, and then that sort of, you know. So I covered that, and he then reached out to me. He said, "You called me scum." I said, "Yeah, I think that's a pretty scummy thing to do." So we actually had a debate, about an hour debate. And essentially, I was saying that you existing is in terms of being a landlord is bad for society, and obviously he tried, he tried supporting his side. So I really recommend you watch that, which is me going head to head with Samuel Leeds, one of the country's biggest landlords or whatever. So I love a bit of landlord bashing.
I feel like it's worth doing a little callback to when we spoke about the Jazz Asphalt story, first of all, and saying, like, really emphasizing that you're not having a go at him for the kind of person he is. Generally,
I sort of did that a little bit, to be honest, but I know
actually in his case, no, that's fair enough. But like generally, the problem isn't that landlords like are bad people as individuals, but the problem is systemic, right? The same way that you can have a good king and a bad king, but the problem is you've got a king in the first place.
Yeah.
The ability to exploit that system is the problem, right?
And I think if you frame it, I like to personally bash bad landlords, right? But I guess if you frame it in a this is a really bad landlord, then it does open up the discussion to, well, there's also good landlords. And then that also then means, what we need to do is just get rid of the bad landlords and we can have good landlords. And that's actually a less radical thing, and you're absolutely right. It's like, we have a really bad king, we just need to replace it with a good king. No, we just need to replace feudalism. So actually, even though it's so easy to just bash landlords as people, and by the way, there's a lot of bad landlords, the more radical thing to do is like, well, it's the system that's the issue, right? We don't want to get rid of bad landlords, we want to get rid of all private landlords.
Yeah, well, because people can't be trusted, because it happens anyway. You give anyone a modicum of anything and everyone goes crazy about it. It's like the same with like the police in the US, like, we just need the police to be nicer. No, being the police makes you kind of crazy. Like being a landlord, being a big dragon person sitting on a pile of jewels, you get weird about it. You start hoarding stuff. Just don't let people hoard it in the first place. This is not the first time I've compared landlords to dragons. But
it's why I hate the framing of bad bosses, right? We all like to dunk on bad bosses. Mike Ashley for one for Sports Direct, Jeff Bezos for Amazon, right? And the media will absolutely talk about bad bosses, by the way. It annoys me, though, because that then means, well, we can have a good boss.
Yeah, let's get a nice one.
What does a good boss actually entail? Does it entail someone who's nice, someone who doesn't want to exploit the workers but does anyway? Technically, there's no such thing as a good boss. Now, that doesn't mean that I'm saying they're all bad people. What I'm saying is, no matter who fills the role as a CEO, which is to serve the shareholders over the consumer and the worker, they're still kind of doing a bad thing. And I think when the mainstream media juxtapose, I cannot speak. Sorry. Contrasts. It's been a long week. contrast good and bad bosses. Again, that feeds into the system's actually okay. It's
like the benevolent master. It's the whole idea of the benevolent master. Like it's the liberal dream of like everything else is fine in the system. We just need nice people to be in charge of all these ridiculous things that mean they can ruin your life.
Wasn't there a Doctor Who episode with Jodie Whittaker? And Doctor Who has always been quite radically left wing. Actually, it's always been quite anti-capitalist. But there was an episode with her doctor where it was exactly like, it was essentially like Amazon. They were kind of doing a warehouse thing, and workers were literally being treated like shit. But the conclusion was like, we need to get rid of the bad bosses and put the good ones in. It's like, oh my god, like this is liberal like 101.
It's the whole plot of Harry Potter.
Sorry?
It's all of Harry Potter is that. It's like the
Is
Ministry of Magic, fine, with its weird little statue in the middle of the hall that's got like wizards standing on top of little slave elves and everything. Oh yeah, that's all fine.
So I've seen the Harry Potter films, but I actually don't know a lot of the analysis of it. I mean, I watched it as a kid, right? I mean, my own analysis was, oh my god, I want to fly on a broom. But there has been some really good sort of critiques of Harry Potter and stuff, and I feel like you've got something to say there because you started off a little bit. So please, I want to hear it.
It's there's a YouTuber, Sean. His YouTube name is
I
Sean.
know Sean. Yeah,
he's done like a whole break, like he just talks about the whole of the Harry Potter films, in the context of like the fact that like, so J.K. Rowling saying after the fact that Hermione could have been black, but in the books she's the one who's like really problematic when it comes to the house elves. She's the one like Hermione doesn't like the idea that the house elves are slaves. Imagine if she was a black character and J.K. Rowling had written her as being haughty about the slaves in the world. Also, the fact, I know Cal's hopped in now. You should have been here for this now. I didn't know.
Is news that slow? We're talking about Harry Potter.
Yeah, I didn't. He heard that.
Thank you, Callum. Shouldn't you be at Green Party conference, Callum?
Yeah, I thought you were busy. But the but the other thing is like the whole idea is like Harry gets like shat on by the Ministry of Magic. They chase him around. They do all these terrible things. They're completely corrupted. And then how does the whole story ends with Harry being like the head of security for the Ministry of Magic? Like, oh, now he's in charge of the system where Voldemort literally got complete control of it. And it's like, now it's all good. Now there's no problems. All of those Death Eaters that were going around, like, I'm getting angrier. All of those Death Eaters that were going around, like, killing people, doing, like, race wars, everyone's just moved past that now. Because now the good guys are in charge. It's so mangled. We should have known years ago that J.K. Rowling was bad news. Also, she wrote all of the characters that she didn't like as fat. Also, Kingsley Shacklebolt as a name for a black character.
Yeah. And also, is the game, right? Because I think a lot of developers in the game are like, we don't agree with J.K. Rowling's message on trans people, but isn't there a trans character in the game and they're called Serona?
Yeah, there's
like Sir in the name is like, right. I mean, it continues with the theme of the bad character names.
Yeah, that and Cho Chang, all of those. Yeah. Outrageous. Anyway.
Yeah, anyway.
Look at this West Streeting clip.
We've kind of gone a bit off rails there, haven't we?
I got angry there. Sorry all. Let's have a look at this clip of West Streeting first.
Let's go.
And then I'll talk about Harry Potter again.
I'm glad you mentioned a former health minister there, Andrew Lansley. Can we talk about another one, Alan Milburn? Why have you been inviting Alan Milburn to meetings in the Department for Health and apparently, according to the Sunday Times, sharing official sensitive documents with him when he's completely unelected, he's unappointed, he's unaccountable to the electorate, and yet he's got a multi-million-pound stake in a consultancy firm that advises on health matters?
Alan Milburn has an outstanding record as Health Secretary under the last Labour government. And unlike poor old Victoria Atkins, who's doing the round this morning, who couldn't turn to any of her Conservative predecessors because they always left the waiting list higher than they found them, every single Labour Health Secretary alive today, from Alan Milburn to Andy Burnham, presided over NHS improvements that gave the Conservatives a golden inheritance of the shortest waiting times and the highest patient satisfaction.
Have you shared official sensitive documents with him?
I make no bones about the fact that in opposition and now in government, I've turned to Alan Milburn for advice. He has been with me in opposition and in government, helping to shape Labour's reform agenda, advising me as the Secretary of State. And of course, at meetings that Alan Milburn has attended that I have invited him to, I have chosen to share papers with him and every other attendee of meetings. Nothing commercially sensitive, nothing inappropriate, but certainly I've invited him to attend meetings because he's an outstanding former health secretary, and I'm proud to have Alan Milburn's support and advice, and I'm proud that Alan Milburn, Patricia Hewitt, John Reid, Andy Burnham, Alan Johnson all delivered the shortest waiting times and the highest patient satisfaction in history.
Mr. Streeting, if your predecessor Victoria Atkins was bringing somebody in to meetings at the Department for Health and sharing official sensitive documents with them, and they had no official role, they were completely unelected and unaccountable to the electorate, you'd have something to say about it. When she was Home Secretary, Suella Braverman shared official documents with John Hayes, who was an actual elected Tory MP, and she got in trouble with the Parliamentary Standards Commissioner. So why are you sharing official documents with a man who I appreciate has an illustrious history within the Labour Party, but he doesn't actually have an official role? What's he doing in private meetings?
Alan Milburn is an outstanding former health secretary.
Why is he in official meetings? I'm proud that he's rolled his sleeves up to help us. And Alan Milburn is also a member of the Privy Council. And look, the bottom line is this. Jacob Rees-Mogg is a member of the Privy Council. Do you want to invite him along?
These are meetings that I convene to look at the NHS reform agenda. I decide who attends and I decide what they see, and I'm very proud that we have a former Labour Health Secretary with an outstanding record in government advising this government.
What's his official role?
I very much hope that we will get Alan Milburn. I very much hope we will get Alan on board in an official capacity. That's up to him. But I'm delighted. I'm delighted to have his. I'm delighted and proud to have his support.
Does he have a pass for the Department for Health?
I don't know, actually.
Shouldn't you find out, because he doesn't have an actual job there?
But he's a former health secretary with an outstanding track record, and look, we can continue down this line of questions.
So I got a bit distracted because you sort of popped your head behind the clip, which is
I was
funny.
shocked. That's outrageous. I was just looking at the article coverage on this. Like, we just had a comment in the chat that's accurate. Milburn is reportedly Starmer's pick for new role driving NHS reform, but his private consultancy paid out more than $8 million to the ex-Labour Health Secretary and family. That cash came primarily from private healthcare interests. He also advises PwC and US private equity firm Bridgepoint, which is the owner of one of England's largest external providers of NHS services. That's that guy.
I mean, it was really striking that he said, well, there's nothing sensitive in the documents. And it's like, but the point is, though, whether there was or wasn't, you shouldn't be giving official documents to someone who doesn't have a role in government. And this, I mean, we'll get into the specifics in a minute, but this drives the heart of the issue of how Labour was sick of sort of Tory corruption and sleaze. And one thing you're going to get from this government is, straight shooters. No one's going to be doing this sort of thing. And they've demonstrated time and time again that Labour are just as corrupt as the Tories, and they will do as much sleaze as they please. And this is an example of it. Now, of course, Alan Milburn is a big lover of private healthcare, taking money off private healthcare firms. Wes Streeting, my God, he loves private healthcare too. Took like nearly 200k from private companies. And it's clear, though, because he said about, well, we got Alan Milburn in, but we also got Andy Burnham in too. I was like, yeah, okay, but like, it's kind of like, how many meetings or how long did you spend with one or the other? I mean, do you think he's really listening to Andy Burnham as much as Alan Milburn? Probably not. It pains me to kind of side with GB News on this, but they asked the correct questions here again for the cynical reasons, because would they be as strong on the Tories? Probably not. But it's absolutely insane, and Wesley is such a despicable character, especially when he said, "I decide." Okay,
I decide
who
what
I
I
be.
get to do. Like,
Oh, really? You decide to be a jumped up, snobby little
blockhead, transphobic piece of
ball
shit.
man, ball sack man. I don't know. I'm trying to be like not sweary, too sweary tonight.
Oh, same, me too. But also, he gave an interview to GB News. Interesting that I didn't realize that the Labour Party were doing that now. I didn't know that we were entertaining.
Of course, though. I mean, they were putting on MPs when in opposition on there. And the thing is, that look. So I actually kind of the thought about GB News, right, is that I think I said before that the left shouldn't engage in GB News. I've kind of changed my position on this. And the reason why is because, unfortunately, I've realized that GB News is here to stay. The problem, though, is that when GB News was first starting and it was having a lot of problems and it looked like it wasn't going to last a month, right? I was like, no one should engage in GB News because they might kind of fail, right? And that'll be funny and we should celebrate that. And by platforming them, that could like legitimize it. And at that point, even within the first month, you had a former Labour MP who was co-hosting. You had many Labour MPs go on there. And I was like, you're legitimizing it. Now, of course, now, 2 years later, unfortunately, they're not going to go anywhere. I feel like, yes, the left should engage with it now because we need to reach across the aisle and convince people. But like at the beginning, when it was their future was uncertain, I was like, we shouldn't. But Labour did that from the beginning, so I'm not surprised they're on there now.
Cog, what do you think?
I think we probably do have to engage with GB News now. I think Curtis is right about that. Sorry, that makes it sound like I'm going to disagree with Curtis on the other stuff. I'm not going to disagree with Curtis on the other stuff.
I actually like West Street.
Yeah, it's I'm actually really keen on West Streeting. I think he's a great guy, a very respectable politician. No, so what I was going to say was the problem with it is having Alan Milburn involved in the first place. Alan Milburn, for those who don't know, spearheaded a lot of the PFI and other private interest involvement in the NHS that happened under Blair, the sort of creeping privatization that really ramped up under the Tories. And the fact that he's got like private contractors with what was it, Bridgepoint Capital, the equity group that he advises, the fact that they have a share in private healthcare, but not just private healthcare, but private healthcare specifically catered to provide stuff for the NHS and make money off of providing stuff for the NHS. That's not a coincidence. There's a reason that he's been given that position as an advisor to them, and we think a paid advisor to Bridgepoint Capital. Like, you shouldn't be discussing these things with this person, never mind showing them, potentially sensitive documents. Just his involvement in the first place is a problem. But there's still another half of the clip if we want to go to that, or if you guys want to add anything first.
I was going to say something. Finally, I get a chance to speak. I have a different take on GB News. I don't think that we should engage with it. I think that the most effective method that any media or like capitalists use to silence voices is just to not platform them. I think engaging with them, reaching across the aisle in that sense, I think actually just deplatforming them altogether and not watching them anymore it's the same as like boycotting to me. But it's a very big question. So let us know what you think in the chat. Or
yes, good question. I want to hear our viewers anyway. What you think? One day GB News might come knocking and ask for one of us to go on there. Do you think that some of us should?
These debatees over here will go straight for it.
I honestly, given that I changed my opinion, yes. If GB News asked me to go on, I would. But I would try and make it my mission to not get invited on again, because I'll talk about the issue at hand, but I absolutely will try and destroy GB News at the same time. What they are as an entity, they're taking money from foreign sort of firms, the Legatum Institute, some finance capital companies. Very funny given their rhetoric on nationalism. They're happy to take foreign money, all that sort of stuff. They started up with 60 million quid. They say it's the People's Channel. So you're not the People's Channel. You're the Bitch for Capital channel. So yeah, if I do go on, it might be a one-time thing.
That's what you get if he gets on there.
I don't know. I think I have a slightly different take again. Like I wouldn't, I don't think I would go on to get thrown off again. Although I know I understand that's not what you're saying, but like I wouldn't be breaking that relationship because actually even debates you lose can have a really interesting effect. The thing is, and the reason that I perhaps disagree with what you said, Sneakcret, is that we're not deplatforming them by not going on their platform. All that means is they're reaching exactly the same number of people as they were before, because they're like established. The media are still going to engage with them. Where Streeting and the Labour front bench are still going to engage with them. They're still going to have like a faux opposition there, but the faux opposition they get is just going to be like crappy liberalism, and people are going to think that leftist ideas don't actually exist. So I think there's actually a need to engage with them, and it's an interesting thing because even debates you lose, you can benefit from. The example I always turn to with this is ContraPoints, the YouTuber who started her career and got a great big boost from debating with Blair White, and by all accounts, ContraPoints lost that debate so badly. But right up to the last few years, people were still finding ContraPoints through Blair White and through that debate. It didn't matter that she'd lost. It mattered that they'd heard those ideas and heard like a different perspective and like gone out and sought ContraPoints channel out and had then had a change in perspective. And I'm hoping that if we get on GB News at any point,
you
then
can plug people and get them over here.
Yeah, get them over to turn left. And this is where we persuade them of the difference in point of view.
We've got some breaking news though. Turn Left contributor Callum Taylor has announced on our chat that he's leaving. He's resigning Turn Left, and he's going to be joining GB News. Shocking developments since I've just discovered this.
Is it that shocking? Because we did know he was a liberal.
True.
But now he's GB News. Is he going? He's going to be the liberal pundit for GB News, or is he going to be the right wing pundit for GB News? No, I mean actually to touch upon what you said, Cog, really good is that if solid lefties don't go on GB News, then they will platform their token left. Because GB News and right-wing sort of commentators think that anything to the left of David Cameron is like a mad, raging lefty. So I think at least we have a duty to get actual lefties platforms, not liberals, because I hate it when liberals are conflated with lefties, because liberals give us a bad name, right? They say, oh, this is the token lefty, and then they're crap. So, when Aaron Bastani or Michael Walker go on GB News, they will talk about public ownership, for example, and that's a really good topic because majority of people support it. I will posit the majority of people, GB News viewers, support public ownership of utilities. You're not really going to get many liberals talk about that, are you? So they're just going to get sort of dragged into the cultural war, which is obviously what GB News likes to do. But if you have a lefty on there, which one will fight against the culture wars on there, but also has a class sort of analysis too, then I think that's quite effective. Essentially,
my angle on this would be thinking about Piers Morgan on Talk TV, because his views almost only come from like debates with lefties, like his actual day-to-day content where he talks about right-wing stuff and he has right-wing people and everyone's right-wing. He gets no views. Like his outrage bait is what drives his visibility.
Content's created, like the style.
Yeah, like looking at Bassem Youssef on his channel. I don't doubt that he has done some good things by being on that channel, but there's a reason he keeps getting invited back. And it also gives Piers Morgan the false validity of like, oh, but I have people on my show who I disagree with. I think that there's a good comment in there of like the idea of like if it gets more people to you, but also as a leftist space, do you want to bring over the people who are watching GB News into Turn Left's community as it stands? I think it's a really interesting question, I think, when it comes to debate, but I feel like it's something we could talk about for a really, really long time. One of the comments that I think basically what Jay's saying in the chat is what I agree with. It's like the master's tools. But
yeah, should we turn to the other half of that clip, because we've only done half of the West Streeting clip, and we are going to be here all night if we don't get through that clip.
Let's do it.
Let's turn to that.
I'll continue to say the same thing.
Well,
I am
you're
not
not answering my
remotely
question.
embarrassed, apologetic about having Alan Milburn involved in helping this government to shape a reform agenda that will be able to deliver the same kind of results as the last
So
Labour
just
government.
to confirm, you're quite
frankly,
happy to have a man sharing official sensitive documents and holding meetings at the Department of Health who does not have an official role at the Department of Health?
Alan Milburn is one of my advisors. He comes in to advise me as the Secretary of State for Health and Social Care, and I've chosen to ask for Alan's help because he has an outstanding record as Health Secretary, a record that Conservatives can't even begin to touch. In fact, a record that they trashed in their 14 years of disaster and incompetence.
Talking about giving passes to people who are helpful to the Labour Party, do you think it was Sue Gray, Starmer's Chief of Staff, who gave Lord Ali a security pass after he had donated £10,000 to her son Luke Conlon's constituency election campaign?
Look, I'm glad you raised this case, actually, because I've been chomping at the bit to say something about this over the summer too. Lord Ali is a senior Labour parliamentarian. He has done something, and this is why he's under fire from the Conservatives, that they can't stand. They fixed the donation rules at a level that they thought Labour wouldn't be able to raise the money for, and Lord Ali helped us to raise the money to outspend the Conservatives at the general election and hand their backsides to them at the ballot box, and they can't stand that fact. But he is a senior member of the Parliamentary Labour Party. He helped advise us and advise the Prime Minister in opposition.
No, but hang on.
He helped us with the transition into government as a senior Labour parliamentarian.
Hang on, Mr.
And that
Streeting.
was an entirely appropriate thing to do.
Hang on, you know why there is a criticism. And by the way, if the shoe was on the other foot and this had happened to the Tories, you would be the first on the airwaves to criticise it. We have Lord Ali donating £10,000 to two different campaigns. One of them is to the campaign of Sue Gray's son, Luke Conlon. The next thing we know, Lord Ali has got a pass to Downing Street.
His name's Liam, but
what did I just say?
Camilla,
Liam Conlon.
Lord Ali is you said Luke. He's a senior parliamentarian who has advised the Labour leader,
for access, isn't it?
supported us in opposition, helped us to transition into government.
But it's
that was an
about cash
entirely
for
legitimate
access.
and appropriate thing to do.
But this guy,
No,
Lord
it's not
Ali,
about cash
he's
for
paying
access.
for
He is a
Starmer's
senior Labour parliamentarian.
spectacles. He's paying for Starmer's spectacles. He's paying for Starmer's suits. He's giving money to Liam, not Luke Conlon, and yet he then gets a Downing Street pass. Why did he get the pass? Why did he need it? Was it a reward for having paid towards Starmer's image and indeed to Liam Conlon, the son of Sue Gray, Chief of Staff's election campaign? Was it a reward?
No, it was about enabling him to support the team with the transition from opposition into those early days into Downing Street. It was practical. And here's the other thing. He is a senior Labour parliamentarian. He is also, by the way, a lifelong outstanding businessman and Labour supporter. And that's the other thing the Conservatives can't stand. They can't stand it when successful business people back Labour, and that's why they've been gunning for him. But he is a senior Labour parliamentarian. He's been a member of the Parliamentary Labour Party longer than most of us in the House of Commons.
They might say they don't like
an invaluable role in helping Labour to win the general election campaign, and that's why the Tories are gunning for it, because they are sore, bitter losers.
I'm gonna lose my shit.
And you said, what the hell is that man doing?
That is a car crash interview. I mean, I'm sure we all have so many things to say. I mean, who wants to go first?
What does he mean? We all know they just can't stand a good businessman. He's a good businessman.
What he's done there is, so he started off by saying, excuse me, the Labour Party did corruption better than the Tories. That's essentially what he's saying.
That's why the Tories hate us, because they can't stand to see a businessman lose.
And then he says, well, you know, he did a great service because we outspent the Tory party. That's the problem. And actually, when she was saying this is cash for access, by the way, because it is, his response was to default to, he's an outstanding person. He's very good for the party. And he also says, what that really grind my gears is like, well, the Tories can't stand it when successful business people back the Labour Party. None of us like it. None of us can stand it when billionaires back the Labour Party. You are the Labour Party, a party for the working class and the working person, right? That's who you're supposed to represent. When you've got big donors, when you've got billionaires backing your party, right? It's not the Tories that don't like that. It's us, the ones who you should be appealing to. I didn't vote Labour. I'm probably never going to vote for Labour because you're a scumbag party for the rich. But I should be voting Labour. I'm a renter. Okay, I'm a worker. I have no assets. I have literally no savings, right? I am working class, despite me not sounding like it to some people who watch me. But I'm working class, and I'm also a mixed race, right? So I should be your perfect voter. Yet you alienated me and millions of people in this country because you're a bunch of bastards who support the billionaire class. And Wes Streeting is smug face. Wes Streeting going on GB News saying, oh, the Tories don't like it when we beat them at their own game, and ignores the blatant corruption that a wealthy man, gave 10 grand to Stu Gray's son, who is well embedded in the party, and he just laughs it off. He is a smarmy prick. He is what Dawn Foster said. She was absolutely correct about him. She's never been wrong, but she was so right about Wes Streeting. You can tell I'm very angry because he is one of the worst people in politics. The worst. And I can't wait until the next election when he loses to Liam Mohammed. He knows he's only got 500 votes in it. He is gone. He is gone.
I feel like I don't want to like give Wes Streeting advice on how to do politics. You know, it's an area he's been in for a long time. But I feel like when you're being accused of corruption and saying, hey, your party is too close to Mr. Conlon, who donated loads of money to you, you know, you're far too close. He's got the relationship there is getting far too personal. I feel like not correcting the interviewer's name, the interviewer's like recalling of the guy's son, is probably the correct path. Like, don't correct them and go, oh no, sorry, his son's name's Liam. Yeah, I was playing tennis with him. No, don't do that. Don't do that. That doesn't say good things. You're trying to like deny the allegations of corruption, and you're just going, yeah. I'm friends. You know, like his son's name's Liam.
Yeah, it should have been.
Don't do that.
It must be Luca's name. Yeah, you probably know more than I do. I don't really know him that well.
Yeah. We're not pals. We're not.
Lovely little gotcha though. It's like, excuse me, it's Liam. It's like, oh, I guess corruption doesn't exist now.
Yeah, no.
Well done, Wes. I think actually Wes can be quite good in the media because he doesn't. Sometimes I do think he has good responses. Well, let me rephrase that. He doesn't have good responses, but like if you're trying to sort of judge someone, you take your political bias out and you're just the average person, how he comes across, I do think he can be quite effective. There, though, was embarrassing. Was horrendous. And the average person will watch that and go, this guy is a smarmy prick. Now, we all know he's a smarmy prick, but like more and more, I think, on the eyes of the, you know, again, those that aren't that politically engaged, it's really coming across like that, I think.
Sorry, I said, Mr. Conlon, Sue Gray. It's Sue Gray's son. Somebody in the chat corrected me. Sorry, misheard that.
The person in the chat is corrupt.
The person in the chat doesn't like the fact that rich business people back the Labour Party now.
He looks like Harry Maguire's weird twin. I hate him. He's done everything wrong. He's awful. That was such a mask slip moment, though, of like, it's also because he's an outstanding businessman. Nobody gives a fuck. Oh, he's an outstanding businessman. Oh, definitely put him in charge of socialized healthcare then. Or supposedly socialized healthcare, right? The free healthcare. You're not planning on making money off that, are you? Because it'd be weird if you did. Like, why are you specifically looking for business people to talk to you about healthcare over here? What a fucking moron. Also, I hate that woman as well, though. So it's a difficult one. It's that Onion article where it's like the worst person you know just made a good point.
Which is, but obviously, you know, she did ask the right questions. But again, it's kind of funny when, first of all, she was correct when she said, if this happened to the Tories, Wes Street would be calling that true. But if this happened to the Tories, GB News wouldn't be questioning them like they did with Wes Streeting. So, but if you support independent left-wing media, right, we'll criticize it, whether it's smarmy prick Streeting or whether it's the Tory doing it, we'll call it out, right? We are biased. We're left-wing biased, but we don't twist the truth, though. That's one thing we don't do. We try and be truthful, but yes, of course, we're biased to the left.
And for just £3 to £5 a month,
yes,
you can sponsor us on Patreon.
Patreon.com/turnleftmedia, I think.
Yeah, I say, what's the URL to get people there?
Or co-fi.com/turnleft.
Oh God!
Sorry, Cog, go ahead.
Nice, we got that. No, we got that down to a T. I was actually going to suggest, because we probably don't want to keep going like all night. So I think maybe we should turn to the truancy fines story, which I think is an interesting one. Sneakcret, do you have like a set spiel that you want to do to introduce this story? Because I don't know the ins and outs of it, but.
I do not have a set spiel, but I did have some information about it. Just give me one moment. Yeah, essentially, the fines for taking kids out of school have gone up. And it's essentially like if your kid is taken out of school without permission over a certain period of time, they're increasing fines from like £60 to £80, which will now rise to £160 if it's not paid within 21 days. So the idea of this was like to encourage people to keep their kids in school, to not take them out of school at any point. And there's like a formal attendance contract that you're supposed to have. But obviously a lot of the children that are being taken out of schools during this time, it's not because they don't care about going to school. A lot of special educational needs kids in particular are going to be affected by it. It's essentially just like a punitive measure that's generally considered to be like completely ineffective when it comes to fixing issues of like persistent absence. So it's just another interesting case in terms of like why we're using the stick again when we already know that like there are a lot of kids that have had, if we're like even just looking back to 2020, 2021 with kids during COVID, like you have a lot of kids that have had extremely strange socialization situations as they've been going through the schooling system. We've also got a lot of kids that are struggling with a lot of issues that are caused by relative poverty because of the situation that we're in as a country. And now it's just like increasing the fines on that is supposed to be some sort of solution, which doesn't really make any sense to me. But that's what I've seen from it so far.
So yeah, I mean, so a lot of for tonight we're just kind of live reacting to the stories. I mean, so did you want to go ahead and do it? Because I've been doing stuff in the background in regards to the Green Party, which I think I'll speak about just in a minute. But did you want to take this one first?
Yeah, sure. So I think it's worth bearing in mind that the evidence we have, that there's been very few studies. I was looking for like meta studies on this. Sort of a meta of studies that we could point to, but there are very few studies done on the effects of fines for truancy. But Coventry and Roehampton universities did a study in 2019 through the Centre for Justice and Crime Studies that you can look up. Sorry, Centre for Crime and Justice Studies that you can look up. And I think it's worth bearing in mind that they had a number of findings that I think are quite troubling when you think about like fining somebody. So first of all, according to the surveys that they conducted, 90% of those who were fined for truancy were parents of SEN kids. So first of all, you've got like the targeting of the disabled, like straight out of the bat, like straight away, you've got the fact that invariably the kids who are truant are SEN kids, special educational needs kids, which suggests should be ringing alarm bells to anybody who's going, oh, it's just that the parents are lazy, right? And then you've got the fact that 74% of those parents convicted in 2017 were women. So you've got like a gendered angle to this as well, because invariably women end up taking on more childcare than men do, and particularly in split in situations where families split. The women's invariably the women invariably take on more of the care of the childcare role. We can sort of like talk about why that is on like a wider spectrum, but it's worth bearing in mind that when you fine these people, you are pretty much fining single mothers. It's really ineffective because it, through a number of assumptions, it tries to assume that one, parents can control their kids all the way to up to the age of 18. Just not true. Two, parents like fully understand and expect the the fine to be coming, and 3, that it's an effective deterrent. And the evidence for these like 3 claims is just not there. Like it doesn't help a mother who can't get her like 16-year-old son to go to school, who's got her own job to worry about, and her own finances to worry about, to have to pay an extra £80 that week, that month, and she's living literally paycheck to paycheck like a lot of single parents. That it's just adding to the problem. And especially one of the few other studies that I did find was from the International Journal of Adolescence and Youth in 2019, which did a study in Sweden, which found that schools with good leadership structures invariably experience lower levels of truancy despite socioeconomic differences. So there are ways to correct for this, but none of them are to do with like penalizing the parent, right? And there's like a wider socioeconomic story here that we could talk about. Do you guys want to jump in on this?
Well, I would like to know what a better sort of system we could have in place. I mean, I know Double D did say that fines should be means tested, which obviously, ironically, we don't usually support means testing, but this is obviously slightly different. You're absolutely right. Again, I don't have all the figures and stuff because it's not something I've researched. Kind of live reacting to this, but most people are against obviously like school fines, but it does hit the poorest people the hardest. Some people can take the hit, but it's also a double whammy because a lot of times parents who want to take their kids on holiday are forced to do it sort of out the season because they're so damn expensive. Going on holiday in August, right, is so expensive that some are opting to get the fine anyway. But it's just unfair. It's not like you're punishing people as if they're doing a bad thing. But I think if people are making a decision that, look, I would like to take my children on holiday, I can't afford to do it at the time when we're supposed to do it, so we're going to do it during term time. They're being demonized for it, and they're being economically punished. It's like, but the reason why they're not taking their kids out of term time is for economic reasons, and for those exact reasons, you're now going to punish them economically. It's the policy that is like a tax on the working class, essentially. Appalling thing to do. But yeah, I would be very interested to see what sort of systems we have in place, because I do think public education is extremely important. But there surely are other ways than just punishing people, and it hits those the hardest, those that are struggling the hardest.
Yeah, I think it's 100% from the school side. Like, I don't know, I've got a couple of friends who are teachers, and like the attempts to go on holiday during the summer holidays is insane. And that is like a crazy issue for itself. I think also the idea of like punitive action for not bringing your kid into school. I understand that there is a requirement for your child to get an education, but I don't think the people who came up with this rule like have any idea what it's like having kids with special educational needs, or like someone said in the chat, like kids that are severely bullied. If you're a trans kid and you've literally got the whole school system set up to basically say that you need therapy, and you're getting horribly bullied, you're getting attacked when you're in school. I haven't checked in on the bullying situation in UK schools recently, but last time I checked, it wasn't great. The idea, like, if you're a supportive parent and you've got a kid who is like high functioning isn't the right language, but is like severely autistic, but in mainstream school, or you've got a kid who is experiencing something really awful at school, supportive parents will keep that kid home, which then means that they're running the risk of getting a fine in a situation where it feels like when Rishi Sunak thought that it'd be a really good idea for us to start fining the homeless. He was like, why don't we fine the homeless for being homeless? It's like, great, what a fantastic business plan. We'll get loads of money back from doing that. We'll pay that back into the system. Kids don't get mental health support. They don't get support for anything at the minute because it's been completely stripped back. So the idea of then being like, and if you don't like it, we'll fine you, is just absolutely crazy to me. I think a good system would be an inclusive system that allows for children to learn remotely if they can, allows for children to go into school in certain times, allows for an individual case-by-case handling of issues like truancy. But we don't get that until we have a funded school system.
I mean, taking 1 week off term time isn't going to change your education. I mean, that's what one person said actually in the chat. And it's like, I mean, Jacqueline actually said, I'll bring up the comment. I hardly think that someone working in Tesco's is going to be thinking, I could have been a brain surgeon if my parents hadn't took me on holiday during term time in 2012. How much of an impact do you think that is? Or the policymakers, right? How much thought behind the decision was based on, we're worried about kids losing out on education, and how much is it actually about, oh no, it's more about control and about, oh, they should be there? Because I feel like the policymakers behind this probably aren't that concerned about the actual education, but because it's like they're doing something wrong and they need to be sort of punished for it, and it's an immoral thing to do. I feel like that is where the aspect comes in from, because when you brought up the terrible policy from Sunak to fine homeless people, obviously everyone knows, well, you can't go after people without any money. You're not going to get any money from it. There's no monetary value from that policy, but it's about punishment. You can't say, well, we're going to put them in jail, because then people are going to go, well, we don't want to pay for them to have food and shelter, because they're in, the Tories would be like, they would actually think, we can't put them in jail because why should the taxpayers pay for shelter and food, even though it's obviously not nice being in prison? They'll just say, we'll fine them, even though they're not going to get the money. We just want them to make them feel terrible and punish them for being homeless, which they can't help.
Our entire approach to education recently and in the past sort of 10 years has been really stupid. I think, first of all, I just want to make the point, like, if something if the punishment for something is a crime, it's essentially free for the rich to do, right? The rich parents can just take into account the cost of being fined, and so can go on holiday when they choose, right? Did they want to go on holiday during term time? That's all right. We'll pay the fine. No problem. That's cool. We'll do that. You're effectively making it, legal for rich people and extremely illegal for poor people. But also, our entire, and I have some friends who work in teaching, and I was talking to them about this earlier. The entire approach with teaching, I mean, a lot of this has to do with SEN kids. It also has to do with kids who are suffering from poor mental health and anxiety. And our entire approach over the last 10 years has been to streamline the exam system into some really, really difficult exams right at the end of the time that you're at school, and let it build up in a what do you call it, like a segmented exam system, and then just streamlining that all into all of that information that it would be acceptable to get taught and then take exams on in like quarterly periods, streamlining that all into like a single exam at the end of the year. And the amount of work that kids are being expected to do in school time, and the amount of hours that they're being expected to revise is more hours than there are in the week. Like, it's more hours than it's actually possible for them to be able to do if you look at like what they're expected to do, what they're advised to do in terms of like revision and revising for GCSEs and A-levels. But there's also the question of like, and it's particularly stupid because what do they think the effect of this is going to be? Okay, let's say you've got never mind like abusive parents, parents who don't care about their kids, putting the kids at risk by fining the parents, but by saying to the school, hey, you have to report this, and if you report this, we're going to fine the parents. If that school like suspects that the child is somebody who is vulnerable, who is potentially being abused at home, and they then have to send a fine to that house, it would have such a bad effect on the school's relationship with the child, the child's relationship with the parent, and the whole like trilateral system between school, parent, and child. So what's the incentive there? Well, the incentive there is to take everything off the record, right? Is to destroy what we know about schooling and destroy the records, because if you keep the records, I mean, the school is going to be like painfully aware. Let's say, it's not even abusive parents. Let's say it's just like poor parents and their kid isn't attending school. The school is going to be painfully aware that like, okay, well, we're not helping anything by like reporting this, because if we report it, we are just handing down a fine to this child.
Yeah.
To this poor parent. And that's going to just further create a bad relationship between the parent and the school. And there needs to be a good relationship between.
I find that very synonymous with the policy of outing trans kids to the parents, and that
exactly
should be forced to tell kids. Tell the parents of the children who, and I say children, I mean, it's, first of all, it's extremely rare, but it could be secondary school kids, right? Who at least want to socially transition, but don't feel comfortable with their parents doing it. And that's what you're going to do. The effect there is to just sort of, probably most teachers might just keep it quiet anyway, but because they're doing something they're not supposed to be doing, that creates more complications. And it's a sort of it feels like over the last couple of decades, public service has been transformed into an arm of the sort of police state. You've got orders for GPs and doctors to sort of, they're supposed to now kind of out people who are here illegally, sort of stuff like that. And my job is to be a doctor, to diagnose people. You've now got teachers who have been told, well, we need to put fines on children who and families who don't deserve it or can afford it. And now it's, well, a kid who knows their parents are bigoted, knows that they wouldn't be accepted, and has no one else to confide in. And they might have a really good relationship with their teachers and says, this is how I feel. I want to speak to you. I don't want anyone to know. And the states are treating every public service as a cop, as a police person, and they've got to now tell their family. So this is, in a way, kind of a wider sort of authoritarian rule going on here, which is far bigger than any political party. This happens across the entire globe, but it's happening more and more and more. And I know obviously people might be thinking, Christ, school fees for taking kids on holidays, authoritarianism now? I know it's a big jump, but I think if you were to look at things holistically, you can find some links there. And I don't think it's out of the question to say it's a behavior from policymakers.
Yeah.
This is what this is how they see society holistically, that the state needs to be involved in these certain ways to stop bad behavior, whether that's more extreme examples or not. And I do think it kind of ties into it together. I mean, I don't know if you share my analysis of that. I mean, I know, Sneakcret, you've sort of been agreeing there, so I'm assuming you do.
Yeah, I do. I think it's, I think what you've said of it coming down to, I think the control thing is what it sits with. I think, like Cog said, it's not, I think, the issue that I find myself having sometimes, and I think you do, as you start to unpack and maybe go further down the leftist pipeline and you start to uncover things. It's when I'm thinking about these sorts of laws, I'm still thinking of it in my head as what was their rationale for that? Do they think this is going to work? What do they but this is so ineffective. This is going to do more harm than good. And I think I still find myself trying to think it through from the perspective of a person who doesn't actively want to reinforce the system that we're in. And I think that was the only thing I was going to add to it, is that it's all of these things seem oh yeah, they're maybe giving into big business, or oh yeah, they want to act quickly, or they're in these, nobody is forcing these politicians' hands. This is a deliberate policy that will make things, it will criminalize children at a very early age. It's going to drive families that are in poverty into further poverty. It's the same as the thing with having to disclose a child's social transition in school. It's designed to scare children into basically going back into the closet. It's all of these different things, the fact that they're involving schools and prison checks. It's an insidious attempt to turn our entire public sector system into something authoritarian that allows them to make, it sounds really stupid, but my husband said the other day he thinks that putting up uni fees was a purposeful attempt to stop people getting better education, so then we'd all become more idiotic and right wing, because people don't, there's less social mobility, so then people don't go into further education, and most people in further education become more progressive. So it's that, all of this is very intentional. It's a way to it was never designed to get kids back into school. I feel that's the only thing that keeps sticking with me on it.
Well, I think you might have a sort of a mishmash of those who design the policy absolutely believe that, and a mishmash of other politicians who are well-intentioned but are so used to how things are run. You can probably say that to some of the Labour politicians in government who are enacting really shitty policies, but think they're doing a good thing. So I don't think everyone who pushes these sorts of policies, like what we're trying to do is clamp down on people's civil liberties. I don't think everyone thinks like that. But it's the sort of
good apples. I'm sure there's some good apples in there.
Yeah, yeah. I also think, and maybe this probably ties into it, is the neoliberalification of education. So how education has changed so much under neoliberalism is that it's become so streamlined to school is about education just for getting the job, a job, right? This is how you navigate a corporate capitalist world, and that's it. And I think that, again, these connections happen not always deliberately.
Someone's coming to arrest you.
There is a fire truck outside.
I thought you were getting arrested as we speak. They'll never.
Yeah, it's Keir Starmer. He's here. Actually, there is a.
Stop doing that.
Sorry. Yeah, it's outside. Yeah, so I think there's a correlation here that might not be deliberate, but I guess that's how the system works, right? Which is that we need to have kids be in school. They need to respect authority, and we can create essentially cogs in the machine under a sort of corporate capitalist world. Because, I mean, for me, education is about so many things, and the arts are consistently being underfunded because education is becoming more and more streamlined to just create either cogs in the machine for workers or entrepreneurs, and that's it. And that's how neoliberalism has destroyed all forms of creativity. And this is where a lot of people get lost here, I think, or I might lose people. But I think that the so-called free market economics also works so much in tandem with authoritarianism. Now, of course, free marketeers say, I'm a free market capitalist because I'm against authoritarian governments. I'm against socialism or communism because it's authoritarian. Free markets is freedom, but often free markets and or free market fundamentalists and neoliberals constantly work with state power. Again, I brought up Allende in 1973 in Chile, who was usurped by a Western-backed coup, who was a neoliberal and massive fascist and authoritarian. That's what's in the last 40 years, as we've had more free market dogma. Do you feel more free or less free? Well, let's pose that question. What about protests? They're clamping down on that. What about, I don't know, planning a protest on Zoom for Just Stop Oil? You get in 5 years. Our civil liberties have been stripped, even though we've gone more into free market fundamentalism. So when I look at the education system, what I see, again, all of this might not be so deliberately interconnected, but what's happening is I'm seeing a link between punishing children who are skipping school because they need to understand authority, and education being a tool for pushing people into the capitalist system, and not talking about or not funding the arts, and education being about exploration and learning, and also the diversity of human beings. Some people can do an office job for the rest of their lives. Some people don't want to do that, but we're morphing everyone to a very specific thing. And I know these feel like kind of crazy sort of left-wing brain rot of tying all these things together, but I think there is a connection there.
I don't think it's brain rot. I think that's intersectional oppression. You got it.
Maybe.
On that note, do we want to talk about the green thing or no?
I think, do you know what?
She asked delicately.
I think we probably should touch. Look, okay, so tomorrow night, I actually realize I'm not on the show. But tomorrow night we have a Green Party conference special. We're going to go through everything that happened at conference. We've got Callum backstage, and I think he wants to talk about it, and I think he can actually give us a little bit. So I think we might spend the last 20 minutes talking about a particular story, which is that the Green Conference has voted in favor of HS2. To my delight, and to many lefties' delight, but obviously some other lefties not so much a delight to that. And I think because this is quite a big story and it's happened today, it'd be strange to not cover it. But I do want to stress that there is a Green Party conference special tomorrow, which we're going to talk everything green. But maybe we should bring Callum in when he's ready in a second, because Callum was at the conference on our behalf. He has some brilliant interactions with the mainstream media. Maybe he can touch upon that. Brilliant interactions with Zach Polanski. He spoke to Adrian Ramsey. Natalie Bennett, and yeah. So I don't know. Do you guys want to dip into the green?
Dip into the green. I was just going to see if we could share our Twitter link over here if people are watching, just to drop it, because that's where Cal's posted out quite a few clips from the conference.
I wonder if Callum, because he's in, can he upload the?
If not,
I think Callum could actually upload. Maybe just do one clip, Callum. Maybe do the Natalie Bennett one actually, because that's already been. He's speaking to me in the background. Maybe share the Natalie Bennett clip, because that's what sparked the sort of HS2 story. It's too big.
I was going to say, don't we want to send people to our Twitter channel? Because if we show them here, then why will they go?
But I don't want them to leave here.
No, but they won't. They don't have to go right now. I don't know. Chat. Will you?
Again, this is a very unorganized night stream.
Will you
so
leave us here?
yeah, will you leave us by ourselves?
If we drop it, yeah, it's up to you guys. I think from my side, I feel like we've gone through quite a lot for tonight. But it would be good to hear Cal's little breaking story.
Okay, let's
just
bring out Callum then.
There it is. Oh, Vicky, you star.
Oh, Vicky, we love you.
Star behavior. The live stream views drops to 1. Everybody goes immediately to Twitter.
Fair, I've just seen about 20 drop already, but that could be coincidence.
Oh, amazing. Yes, I don't know. Like, it'd be good to hear from people what they think of doing this. Like, obviously, we wouldn't do it late and also without the audio at the start, and also a little bit on the struggle bus normally. But if you like the idea of like us talking through things that you suggest in the chat, or that you send to us ahead of time, because there is like, I think there's a lot of topics that I feel like talking about the GB News thing, we could probably talk about that for like an hour and a half on its own. I feel like talking about the schools thing, we could talk about that for like a whole hour. So it's always really interesting.
We're going through changes. I think we're experimenting with our content a little bit, and I think maybe this show, the debrief, could be one for experimentation. So yeah, I mean, I'm not sure. I mean, I think we should probably want what the audience wants. You know, maybe they want this kind of really like just talk for 2 hours about anything, or whether they want more structure. I don't know. I mean, we do have Normal Islands Live, the standard one, which is very structured. So, and Sundays are supposed to be a bit more relaxed anyway. But as we're growing, we are experimenting a little bit.
Oh, by the way, gang, in the chat, I've seen quite a lot of people saying about ADHD and autism stuff. Like, yeah, when I'm speaking on it, it's myself and my sister. Were both diagnosed later in life. And thinking back now on like our school time, there were definitely a few flags where we might have been like running the risk of getting our parents fined over it. But it's crazy. It's really hard.
Sneakcret, do you mind me asking? Is it one of you's got ADHD and one's autism, or both?
Yeah, we got full set. I'm ADHD, and then my little sister's autistic. And there is a stat about it that's like 60% of people whose older siblings have ADHD have autism, which makes it feel like when my sister sent it to me, she sent it to me in a kind of a, well, so that's your fault. Because she turned it into causation. Because you've got ADHD, now I've got autism. But it's really, really common to have it in like family line stuff. Although I posted a TikTok today about eye contact, and unpacking that has made me feel like perhaps it's not just ADHD. There might be a touch of autism in there, because I don't get it. I don't know what you guys are doing.
Yeah, I feel like people learn about eye contact, and they either do a thing where they're like, I've learned too much about eye contact and now I can't look at anything, or they like look at the like ridge between somebody's nose. But then what they end up doing is they end up doing this. They end up having a conversation where they're like talking to you like this.
That is exactly
like trying to look into your eyes in order to be polite, and it just gets really scary after a little bit. Because they're looking at you like that.
Yeah. Yeah, people
I
don't
mean,
like
I
it.
find myself in conversation with people. I tend to look around a lot. I'm quite erratic.
Because I think you've got ADHD.
I mean, I don't want to like self-diagnose myself, but
I'll do
I've
it.
not. I've definitely had people in my life tell me that. I've been told that like, oh, your partner's really grounded, and you're like the opposite. You know, a bit sort of everywhere. And when I talk to people, unless I have to think about the eye contact, so a lot of time I'm sort of just looking around, yeah, and I'm like in my head, oh, I wonder if I'm not doing much contact. So I'll make a conscious effort to look at people in the eye. But I don't know if I stare or not, but actually that's probably not up to
I'm
me.
realizing now that your YouTube thumbnails, I've always thought that it's a determined stare.
Uh-huh.
Is that
it's
just
actually
you doing? Is that you purposefully doing eye contact? Is that why?
That's me. That's probably me mewing, isn't it?
That's why that is that way.
I don't know. I've never.
Purposeful eye contact looks weird. People don't do it. Apparently, non-neurodivergent people are just looking generally in your face area, and that's what they mean by eye contact. Which means, why the hell are you calling it eye contact then?
I thought you were
That's
going to
fake
say.
contact.
I thought you were going to say that it was like a. What was the term you used? You thought it was like a direct stare. What did you say?
I'm now unmasking my thumbnails.
Like a yeah.
Yeah.
I thought serious.
Yeah, I thought you were going to say I thought it was a direct stare, but actually it was just a vacant stare.
Just a vacant
I thought that's where you were going with it. Just.
I mean, I vacantly stare a lot given the state of politics.
Yeah, that's fair.
That could just be disillusionment with politics.
Yeah.
Jacqueline, could either of my parents be on the spectrum but undiagnosed? Yes. My dad took a train 3 stops the other day before realizing that his t-shirt was on back to front. And my mum is exactly the same as me. So I think that's part of the issue with us getting diagnosed. Like, there was no control variable. My parents thought everybody else was really uptight. They weren't. They were just neurotypical. It's not that everyone's really clean. Yeah, bright, talented, don't try or apply themselves. Lots of creative flair. Creative flair, just need to apply themselves. And when we apply ourselves, look what we can do.
Honestly, we can do some really brilliant stuff.
And for just £3 to £5 a month.
Yes, get that in there. I have noticed though that we had a big surge of Patreon donations a couple of months ago, but it has plateaued and some people have cancelled. It does suck asking for it, but look, I mean, to be honest, Helena gave me a lot of advice on it. She's like, you need to kind of be unashamedly plugging it because most people just kind of forget. You know, a lot of people have well-intentioned, but if you don't remind them, then they might not do it. And look, at the end of the day, in order to have a media that is sort of on the side of the working class and ordinary people, you kind of need to be funded by them. That, and also because no one's going to fund us anyway, being left-wing. So we don't really have a choice anyway. But what I do say is I don't want people going out of pocket to say, like, I ain't got much money. I promise I'll give you something. Never, ever stress yourself for it. It's only if you can. But yes, obviously, did I announce this before? I don't know if I announced it or not, but basically we may have a studio in London. It's not ours, it's a shared space, which is really exciting. It's going to be really gorgeous. And we can do our normal island lives there. It's going to be like pro shit, but obviously it'll be very sparingly because not all of us live in London. Most of us don't live in London, which is good, by the way, because the media is so London centric. So actually we can say that I'm in Leeds. I'm not a northern, but I'm in Leeds. Sneakcret, you're up north.
I'm up north.
Yeah, but so obviously it costs money to get down to the studio. So I'm thinking maybe potentially we could have like a monthly normal Island show in the studio, and basically to say that, look, if you want to see every episode of Normal Island in the studio, or you want to see every different host in there, then please support us financially because we can pay for people's train to go down.
Get us, pay for our train tickets, please. Yes. Cal has said that he's ready.
Okay, let's should we get Callum in? Someone sent me a DM apparently. Edward Gregorian.
Cal, should we bring you on? Shall I jump out and then Cal, you can come on?
So that you make an excuse to leave?
I'll step out because I have like less to say on this anyway.
Okay.
What I'll do is I'll step down. I will see you guys a little bit later on.
Okay. Thank you.
Say bye, Cog.
say bye, Evan. Oh, I was gonna say chat, say bye, but he's dipped out there. Maybe he's got another barbecue.
Hey, Cal.
Yes, Callum. How are we
He-
doing?
Hello, conference. I mean, hello, normal island. How are we?
We are good. We are good.
I'm all right. I'm sorry. I'm a bit haphazard today. I've not got my best camera on. I wasn't expecting to come on, but I like it. Where do we start? Well, I am straight off of visiting Green Party conference in Manchester. And for those of you who don't know, it's been a little bit controversial this afternoon. Yeah, I mean, do you want me just to go sort of straight into it, or what? How we?
Throw us straight into it.
I can tell you what's been going on. Well, I mean, a few things.
Sorry, Callum, can you turn your mic down a little bit? And Sneakcret,
Probably,
are you able
yes.
to boost your volume at all? Maybe just speak close. I think we're getting a slight different.
Maybe I just need to go closer.
Maybe.
Too movement. Too heavy movement.
It's because I'm using my. It's
It's
because I'm
slightly
using
peaking,
my.
that's all.
Well, bear with me. Sorry about this. This is the beauty of live broadcasting.
Give us money to be professional. I was just doing a big 5-minute patron sort of appeal.
I'll just switch it. Is that any better? I've just switched, and I've not got my.
so.
Cool.
Yeah, I mean your levels are very good. Yeah.
That's perfect. I can set another one up while we're chatting.
Oh yeah.
Oh no, I can't. It's broken. I forgot about that. Oh well. So yeah, Green Party conference. It's been really good. Just, I mean, to start us off, really positive vibes actually. A lot of hope, a lot of talk of change, a real sense of, you know, fighting for something different. I think a lot of new members for the first time in conference, myself included, were there taking part. And yeah, some really good decisions from conference. We voted this afternoon to recognise a genocide is taking place in Gaza and Palestine, and to recognise that the Israeli policy is an apartheid. We voted to ban, well, obviously to be in favour of banning greyhound racing. That was something else. There was some speeches that were really quite emotional around that, actually. People with personal experience with greyhounds of their own, and when we talk about animals, it always makes people a bit teary. So we had some fantastic conference speeches. We were missing a co-leader though. Carla Denier was unfortunately down with the flu, so she beamed in from a hotel room on the beginning of the opening of conference to deliver a little bit of like a, you know, hi conference, sorry I can't be here, but you know, I'm rooting for you sort of speech that she'd pre-recorded from her hotel room. And Adrian Ramsey took to the stage and he delivered his speech. We had speeches from Zach Polanski. We had a tribute to Caroline Lucas, lots of different events going on as well, sort of different fringes of the party. So yeah, so overall it was really quite an interesting experience. And if you tune in tomorrow night, I'll be hosting a Normal Island live to talk about Green Party conference. But the controversy, so this afternoon we had a vote on a proposed motion that was basically to essentially, I mean, I'm being a bit simplistic here, but essentially to overturn previous Green Party conference, which has always been opposed to HS2, and to support HS2, to appeal to the government to finish HS2 in full, including the east to west line, as well as finishing the line all the way up to the north. And it was controversial for a number of reasons, but if nothing else, it's just a huge divide throughout the party. There was a vote in the room where so we had members online that were voting online, and members in the room that were voting, and it was tight, but they called it as a pass for the motion. However, there was then a little bit of discourse. Some members weren't happy and they decided to put it to a card vote. So everyone has a little card that then gets put into a ballot and it all gets counted, because that also includes proxy votes, which means that people who were not able to attend conference, who may have wanted to vote on that, their vote was able to be counted and included as well. So they went to a card vote and it still passed, but it was by about 30 votes. Now, literally minutes after this passed, I spoke with Baroness Natalie Bennett, who is one of the two peers, Green Party peers in the House of Lords, and she's been a vocal opposition to HS2. And I'll play the clip. I'm not sure what size this is going to be on the screen, but this is what she had to say.
We're speaking now literally minutes after we've just had the vote on HS2, which was on the HS2 motion, which came to conference, which was a very, very tight vote. There was only I think in the end there was about something like 30 votes in it. It was a very tightly fought vote. I think the really important thing to say is this is not any kind of endorsement, and I think the proposers of the motion would agree with me, not any kind of endorsement of the gravy train that is the current HS2 construction system. I believe there's going to be a program in a week or so's time on Panorama talking about how corrupt, how much people have taken enormous salaries and enormous profits out of the HS2 construction process. This is not the Green Party endorsing what's been done the way HS2 has been done. However, there is in the party a very strong desire, and I think lots of the debate and lots of the motion, when you look at the detail of it, is focused on the desire for a working northern train system. There's a huge desire, and I share very passionately, and have been talking about it well before this motion, the need to improve east-west train services, particularly Liverpool to Hull and all the points in between across, and people have seen that with some justice, but not, I don't think they're entirely right, that this is all part of a system and they want to see that northern services dealt with. Now, the Green Party doesn't whip, so I am not forced as a person. I will identify that the Green Party has now said broadly we're in favour of that Northern Rail and the HS2, and that's what the Green Party is saying. I will not personally be speaking in favour of HS2. It was an ill-conceived, disastrous project. As I said in the motion, I don't know what my personal view is. I don't know what the best thing to do is now.
Now, obviously, Natalie Bennett making it very clear there, she will not personally speak in favour of HS2. And that comment from a Green Party peer, speaking out against a very new Green Party policy, was a Turn Left exclusive, actually, and it was funny because after we'd finished the interview, I'd let Natalie know, obviously, that we would be putting that out there, and her reaction was quite funny. She was like, "Okay," she was, "I'll let the press office know then, and I'll deal with the consequences." But yeah, we've got quite a prominent voice within the Green Party there speaking out against it. Now, obviously, we shared that clip in our Twitter account, and a lot of people on Twitter are quite angry about this. People are unhappy that the fact that Green politicians aren't whipped is something that people are talking about. So, I mean, I wonder what you two think about it, both about obviously the motion to now support HS2, but also the fact that the internal workings of the party do allow people like Natalie to publicly speak out against what is a democratically agreed policy within the party.
I was just going to say that I think it's really cool that they don't have a whip. That's one. It's just really refreshing, to be honest, to see a party, like a senior person within a party, saying like, "I don't like this." I just think that's something. But I don't want to talk too much on it because I want to save it for your tell all tomorrow night as well. But it's quite refreshing to see. I mean, vote either way. I feel like I get her idea of like, I don't know what to do now. But it's really, really nice to see a politician being able to speak in that way.
I mean, it wouldn't make sense to have a whipping process anyway. There's 4 MPs. I don't know, reform. I mean,
Yeah,
reform
fuck
do
them,
actually have a whip. They
actually.
do, don't they? They do have a. They actually do have a whip. It wouldn't make sense to have a whip anyway. It's for MPs. I think there's probably a case to have a whipping system if 2029 general election, if that were to happen, and the Greens manage to break through and they get like 20 MPs, maybe there's a case for a sort of whipping system, which is absolutely nothing like the Labour one, which is just draconian. I'm actually quite surprised at the negative reaction. Now, I understand people were annoyed at Natalie speaking against HS2, fine, but what she said to me seemed quite okay. So first of all, my personal position is I'm very happy that HS2 has passed. I'm pro HS2. I'm glad the Green Party took a democratic vote and came to this conclusion. But Natalie Bennett simply said, okay, well, this is what the party's voted for. And I like that she clarified. And in the HS2 vote, you can correct me if I'm wrong, Callum, but they also talked about how the HS2 project from other governments has been terrible. We're not just going to do it the same way. We're going to do it better, not corrupt, right? So
yeah,
Natalie spoke against how HS2 has been implemented, but says, well, the party's voted for this. But my personal opinion is I'm against it. And I've seen some people saying, I voted Green and I'm not going to vote Green now because this has really annoyed me. I'm like, but I mean, I like the fact she's allowed to have her own view. So she said, this is my personal view, but the party voted this way. Bit confused that this is controversial. I understand it's controversial for those who don't like HS2 and don't like the party vote for it. Something they didn't want. I get that. Bit dismayed or confused that pro HS2 people like myself were annoyed at the clip because Natalie Bennett had a personal sort of personal view that was not in support of it. I mean, we need to break away from the way the Labour Party runs things and just have yes men or people who are absolutely against the policy and speak out in favour of it. I mean, let's contrast that with Rory Stewart, who is now the Liberal darling, which I think is nuts because he's like, I didn't even really support austerity. I just did it because the party did. That makes it even worse, if you ask me. 330,000 people are being linked to austerity. And you're telling me that you voted to enable 300,000 social murders and you didn't even believe it? That kind of makes it worse. So I think that was more open and democratic from Natalie. Again, I disagree with her on policy, but it's absolutely fine that she has a different point of view.
Yeah, I think some of the argument is more just about the fact that I think it comes from a place of concern that if prominent figures within the party are still speaking against something, even after, I mean, and in fairness to Natalie, that interview was literally 5 minutes. We had the vote. What had happened was we'd had the initial vote where it looked like it had passed, and then when we went to the card vote, we actually voted on a different motion. That was when we actually had the motion on Israel and Gaza. And while that was going on, the card vote was carried out. So then we got the result from the Gaza vote, and then at the very end, we heard the final votes results for the HS2 vote. Literally, we got the results. I was already with Natalie, and within 5 minutes of us getting those results, we were in the room filming that interview. So in fairness as well to that, it was literally just after. But I think some of the concern that people have is that if prominent members within the party are able to speak out against a policy after it's been democratically voted on, I think some of the concern is that they'll just ignore the fact that it's party policy, just like Keir Starmer's done with proportional representation, for example, that was voted on at party conference within the Labour Party a couple of years ago. I think that's the concern that some people have around it.
And before we do dive into a really intense HS2 debate, I am going to say, because I know that both of these guys have very, very interesting and informative opinions on this, but we are at 10 o'clock. So
yeah, no, if I'm honest, I don't think we should have a debate right now. It's 10.
No.
That's...
But just a shout out to myself for tomorrow. I will be covering obviously this story and other stories from the Green Party conference. We're going to be hearing from Zach Polanski. We'll hear from Adrian Ramsey. We'll also hear from some people within the party who feel as though they've been let down and abandoned by the party. People who are currently calling themselves Greens in exile, who have been kicked out of the party
Oh.
for what they describe as gender critical views.
Oh, not
so we'll be
all then.
yeah, so we'll be touching on that as well. But there's lots to talk about, and yeah, it's been
I have
an
to say
experience.
though, Callum, you've done phenomenal work. Really, I'm so proud. I mean, it's been absolutely brilliant because we didn't have enough free time to do a whole sort of turn left goes to Green conference. So, and obviously you're a member, you wanted to go anyway, but you got a lot of content out of it completely unplanned. You were like, let's try and get interviews with these people. So I thought that was fantastic. And I just think, yeah, I mean, what we're trying to do with Turn Left is really, really good stuff. But yeah, you've absolutely smashed it out of the park this weekend. So I'm absolutely ecstatic. But this is the thing, like, this time next year, you will see Turn Left at every conference. We're going to have proper production going to conferences. We're going to get the high profile interviews. We're going to get the Vox Pops. I mean, we might have some Vox Pops this year actually for some of the conference, but we're going to do it properly next year because we're going to have time to do it. I mean, I'm very busy right now. I mean, I work 6 days a week outside of Turn Left. Trying to do that in your spare time is incredibly difficult, and that's the same for everybody else here. Again, I'm not trying to shamelessly plug the Patreon, but I want to stress to people that is how we operate. All 5 of us have full-time work. And I think what we're achieving right now, the amount of content we're putting out, I think is really impressive, given that this is not what we do all the time. There are other outlets out there, maybe on the right, who get their grift money. You know, they've got the time to do it. We don't. Yet we still try and do it. And I also appreciate everyone who has watched over the years, who's watching now. You said earlier we're on 14.2k subs. Mm-hmm. We're approaching 15,000 subscribers this month. It's really exciting.
Mm-hmm. And for just £3 a month. No, I'm joking. I'm not going to do it again. No, Cal. Yeah, if for anyone who is watching now, Cal is going live tomorrow night. It's going to be fantastic. You've got so much content. I feel like you literally were just running the last 48 hours.
We'll see. I came home and just uploaded it all to my computer whilst listening to the conversation earlier about school fines, and I looked at it and I thought, I've not got anywhere near enough. But then when I think about it, you know, it's the good stuff. You know, I got 3 minutes with Adrian Ramsey, right? I got 3 minutes. It was all I got, 3 questions. But I got it. Do you know what I mean? I got about 15 minutes with Zach Polanski, deputy leader. You know, I got a conversation with Natalie Bennett. I got Vox Pops from people that had proposed policy motions that have been accepted. We'll hear from Hannah tomorrow. Probably I need to remember to put this in the show if I'm going to plug it. Who had a really emotional speech actually in favour of the ban on greyhound racing. So we'll hear from her. You know, there's loads of really good stuff that was going on, but we, like Curtis says, we want to be able to do this time next year. We want to be able to do this properly now. The reason that I've been able to get so much at Green Conference this year is because I'm a member of the party, so I was able to attend. But you know, in order for us to get into all those other conferences, we do need some help and support. So I'm not going to do it again either, because I know that Sneakcret's been plugging it already. But with your help as well as viewers, I'm sure we'll certainly.
I think it's fine that you're doing it because we've done it. Now it's your turn to do it.
Well, one of the panel sessions that I attended was about the media and essentially how the Green Party can work with corporate media and sort of get more media coverage essentially in a world where we know we have a right-wing press that doesn't favour or support the smaller parties unless Nigel Farage is involved with them. And one of the panelists made a really good point and basically just said that we need to consume and watch more of the media that we want to see. So, you know, independent organizations like ourselves, if you want to see, you know, independent journalism of this kind, then you need to watch it, you need to share it, you need to get other people on board, because, you know, people like us, we wouldn't exist if we didn't have the viewers and the people that were supporting us, you know, and every single person that supports this channel, every single person that subscribes, everyone that likes, everyone that shares. Even if you can't afford to donate, it's great if you can, but even if you can't afford to do that, whether you're clipping our clips down and sharing them on social media, whether you're retweeting us, whatever it is, we wouldn't be able to do what we do without your support. And what really surprised me, and this is testament to you, Curtis, and the work that you've done on this channel so far, is that actually a lot of the people I spoke to over the weekend, they know about us. You know, we're on the rise because we're doing shows and we're putting out regular content, and we've got a fantastic set of viewers. And shout out to all the regulars that come and support us every night. And we wouldn't be able to do it without you guys. So yeah, cheers.
I don't think we could end on a better note than that, could we?
And for just £3 a month. All right, yeah, let's wrap it. Let's wrap it up.
Yeah, that was a
Considering
long
we were worried
show,
about
wasn't
having
it?
No news.
We've completed news again.
We've once again completed the news. Fantastic. Cool. Yeah. I think if anybody wants to hop in tomorrow night, it'll be great to see. Put your little notification bell on, share the content, subscribe, send messages, tweet us, all of those different things. Donate to us on that coffee thing. We won't talk about Harry Potter again.
No, I think it's also
until tomorrow.
It is also very important that people do hit the notification bell, because I've had my girlfriend subscribe, of course, and she says she never ever gets alerts about a video being uploaded or whatever. And people have been telling me this, that like there's really issues with even community posts. I mean, we're getting comments on community posts from Lewis Aaron's first live show about 2 weeks ago, and I've just seen this. So YouTube is completely fucked, I think. So I do think, look, if you're going to subscribe, please hit that notification bell as well, because something's going on. It's not really working properly, but at least you'll get notified. Yeah. And you can come on and drop in and watch us.
Excellent. Yeah. And Samuel, if you want, I don't know if you want more Harry Potter talk or if you don't want Harry Potter talk by that comment. So depending on what your intention was, yes.
Nice. Right. Political
Thank
speak.
you all very much for watching. We will see you again
and thanks
soon.
to Cog as well. Thanks, Cog.
And thanks to Cog. Thank you, Cog. We will see you again soon. Bye.
Bye.
Patreon.com, Turn Left Media. Support independent media. Support social justice that's there on social media. Thank you, Turn Left.